Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Dangote Group, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, has criticized the latest increment of interest rate to almost 30% by the Central Bank of Nigeria. At the opening session of a three-day summit organized by the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, at the banquet hall of the State House, Abuja, on Tuesday, Dangote said businesses could not cope with the current rate. He called on the government to protect existing businesses in the country, especially manufacturers, by providing an enabling environment for them to thrive. According to him, an import-dependent country is equivalent to poverty importation. Joining us now to discuss this issue is Professor Ndubisi Nwokoma, and how interest rate has also affected the manufacturing of goods in Nigeria. Professor Nwokoma is a professor of financial economics and chairman advisory board, Center for Economic Policy and Research at the University of Lagos. Prof, good morning. It's good to see you again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. Okay,
Prof, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, they had a summit with the federal government. The VP is talking about a framework to be worked out, a roadmap to be worked out with the participation of manufacturers in Nigeria to address the problem. But the manufacturers themselves, including Alhaji Aliko Dangote, including Otumba Francis Meshioye, they're saying there are issues about the business environment, inflation, interest rate, and that, look, government cannot be saying buy made in Nigeria goods if people don't have the opportunity to even manufacture those goods in Nigeria, and we're import dependent. What do you think, Prof?
Yes, I agree entirely with the position of manufacturers about the business climate. It's not conducive at all. And I think those are the areas that government should be looking at. Very critical, because it is not conducive for a manufacturer to operate in Nigeria successfully. There are so many issues to look at. Is it infrastructure? Energy is an issue. Stability of the macroeconomic policy is an issue. Government being able to put its house in order is an issue. Inflow of foreign capital is an issue. The tariff measures is an issue. How easy is it for them to bring in their raw materials without too much hassle? The exchange rate is an issue. So there are so many issues that need to be looked at. Of course, inflation, because if they're going to buy some of their goods locally, they also have to battle with inflation. So the operating environment within the economy is a major issue, and it's actually one of the issues driving inflation, but maybe as we proceed, we can look at that more critically. So I agree with manufacturers. I happen to also have been at various AGMs, here in Lagos, to discuss the environment for business. It is not conducive at all, and I think that is the area government should be looking at, very critical.
Take a look at the area of interest rates that, of course, Aliko Dangote did emphasize that with a close to 30% interest rate, it makes a difficult situation even more exacerbated. However, I look at the case of Egypt, and Egypt is sitting at 27.25% interest rates, higher than Nigeria's 26%. However, this year we've seen Egypt grow to become the biggest economy on the African continent. And when you look at their economic data over the past few months and over the year or so, there's economic growth. So can you delve deeper into this issue of interest rates, and if there's some lessons that we can learn from Egypt to adapt into this environment?
Yes, thank you very much. Before we begin to make comparisons, we should look at the fundamentals of each economy. Interest rate has a link with inflation rate. You must be able to look at, and that may be the area that central bank is trying to look at the link, the return on capital. If you have your inflation rate higher than your interest rate, it's a problem, because if you put in money in the bank, maybe 100 naira, you lose more than you gain because the interest rate is lower than the inflation rate. So that is basically what government is trying to look at. However, you also have to look at the issue of production. When you begin to jack up interest rates without taking into account other fundamentals of the economy, Egypt, we have to also find out what is their inflation rate and what are the issues, their debt burden. How is the central bank operating? And take a look at the level of production, productivity, the GDP growth rate. So before you can now begin to take a look at just two variables, you must take a look at all others and then come to an agreement that, yes, this is what is driving economic growth or not. When you have interest rate at about 27%, like in the case of Egypt, you must also have to find out what's the inflation rate in Egypt and find out the way government is spending money in Egypt to be able to address the key productive sectors that can create jobs. When you create jobs, you also enhance income, not just nominal income, but real income, because you have to bring in inflation. You're talking about real income. For Nigeria, it's a different environment. Nigeria has an unstable system because people cannot even produce, even agriculture. We are even tomato now. You have a small pot of tomato. You price them in thousands. So there's no production going on because of instability. Insecurity is there. So you cannot produce. And that drives inflation. So you have to also take a look at the exchange rate in Egypt. I also look at it in Nigeria, how it relates with other currencies. Those are the issues. So the comparisons by taking a look at interest rates alone will actually be kind of a one-sided analysis. For Nigeria, I think the interest rate is high. And I want to guess why the central bank is doing what it's doing, because at the last MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee meeting, it was jacked up to almost 27%, 26.25. And I think what is driving that is the need to fight inflation and attract foreign capital, which in my view is slightly flawed. Because you need to find out for Nigeria what is driving inflation in Nigeria, which for me is largely fiscal operations. And then the cost of doing business in Nigeria is very, very high. So it's a cost push thing. It's cost push. And what central bank is doing in Nigeria is the assumption that it is purely a monetary phenomenon. Squeeze credit, make credit more expensive, make it costly, so that the pass-through effect to exchange rate will actually be dampened, and that will affect the exchange rate. So those are the areas which I think central bank is following, which in my view ought not to be. What CBN should do is to take a look at what are the driving factors for inflation. What are the forces? Very critical.
Prof, but as we wrap up, we all know that it's not for CBN to do. One area we have not talked about is the fiscal side. I mean, he can only tinker with monetary policy side. But what about the fiscal side? What about this same government? What are they doing as regards food, as regards agriculture, as regards roads, as regards bolstering the economy, as regards manufacturing, as regards productivity? The fiscal side, as we wrap up.
Yes, the fiscal side, in my view, is what should be the focus of government. The cost of governance is too high. We are channeling money to the wrong sectors. We need to channel money to the area that the engine of growth of the economy. The fiscal side is the really cost, not the monetary. We have been doing this monetary. We've been jacking up interest rates since this government came into office last year. The MPL has been going up, and the problem has not been solved. So they should look at the fiscal side. Government should make effort by cutting down the cost of governance. That is number one, very critical. And once you do that, thank God, they've been able to address the issue of ways and means. So that will dampen the monetary phenomenon in driving inflation. What government should do is take a look at the fiscal side, expenditure profiles. And they're talking about no money, but the money we have, where is it going? The issue of oil theft, we don't even meet our OPEC quota. So those are the areas we should be looking at. And then the operating environment that people can produce. Let farmers go and plant tomatoes. Let them go and plant yam. It will bring down the cost of these particular products. So it is the environment and the fiscal side that will be able to help us get out of this. And in that case, we can bring down interest rates. As far as I know, for now, it is actually very, very, and I agree with Dangote, it is high. And there's no way and a small business can actually thrive with the current structure.
Well, Prof, thank you very much. We'll keep watching how the economy turns out, both on the monetary side and the fiscal side.